Hello folks, and welcome back. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at nesting and pre-composing in After Effects. Nesting and pre-composing is the technique of grouping together layers so that they can be manipulated, moved and worked on as a single composed layer. Now there are many reasons that you might want to group together layers, and I'm going to present to you with a scenario in which nesting and pre-composing layers might be useful. In this instance, I'm working on a piece of kinetic typography. My overall aim is to have the animation running at around a minute. And if you look at what I've got on the screen now, I might already be running into some problems. The first of which is that I've got around 5 seconds of animated text with 6 text layers on the screen. I want them to move off the screen all at once in order that they can make way for other animated layers. Now, if I try to move each layer off the screen one at a time, it would be very fiddly and really slow down my workflow. This is where nesting layers can really come into their own. I'm going to create a new composition of around 50 seconds first of all, and I'm going to set that as my main animation or my main comp. Let's do that now. So I'm going to go to Composition, New Composition. I'm going to call this Main Comp. Down here, the duration I'm going to set to, let's say, around 55 seconds, give or take. I'm then going to click on OK. Now that I've got my main composition here, which is running to around 55 seconds, I can drag the composition I was working on, which is this one, into the timeline. It now operates as a single layer, as we can see. The great thing about this is I can now open my transform properties on the layer, and I'm just going to get it to the point where the last piece of text comes on, like so. I can set a position keyframe here, go forward a few frames, whoops, a little bit too far. I can then grab the layer as one and move the entire thing off screen. So I've now got a lovely nested composition where the text comes in and then as one layer moves off screen, like so. Now, one of the great things about nested compositions is that I can go back to the original layer, like so, and I can make changes here. These changes will then be updated in the main comp here. So let's go back to the original composition. I'm going to select Typography, that text layer. In fact, let's come back and have a look at it. There it is. So I'm just going to select that layer. It's now highlighted, and I'm going to change the color of that layer to red. There we go. Click on OK. And now, when I go back to the main comp, if I look here, that piece of text has now changed to red. What this means is, whatever changes have been made in the original layer here, in this case, I changed this word to red, will be updated in the main comp here. And that's where nesting can be really, really useful. Even though you've now got a nested layer here, you can update it here, and those updates will come back in the main comp here. And of course, we can now move this layer off screen because it operates as one layer in its own right. The other technique that you might want to employ is known as pre-composing. It actually ends up with a similar result, but it works in a bit of a different way. To pre-compose a bunch of layers, I'm going to click on the top layer here, shift-click the bottom layer below, and then you can go to Layer, Pre-compose, or if you prefer, you can do a right-click here and click on Pre-compose. This is the Pre-compose window. Now, at the moment, you've only got a limited amount of options. This option here has been grayed out. This option will only be activated if you're trying to pre-compose one single layer. You may be wondering why someone would do that, but it may be the case that you've got multiple effects on one layer. You want to pre-compose it and put it into another composition. If that's the case, this layer would be activated. But at the moment, our only option is this, which is move multiple layers, so move all the attributes into a new composition. I would recommend you select also Open New Composition here. I'm going to type in the new composition name, and I'm going to call it Section 1. So let's imagine this is Section 1 of my animation or my piece of kinetic typography, and I'm going to click on OK. Here is the original set of layers, still labelled as Section 1, and up here we've got a new composition, also called Section 1. If we go back to the original comp now, it's been compressed or pre-composed into one layer, as we can see. If I wish, I can now go to Composition, New Composition. I'm going to create myself a main comp again. Going to leave the setting to 55 seconds and click on OK. And I've now got a main comp here. I can then grab this position with motion blur that I was working on earlier, bring it down, and as you can see, it operates as one single layer. If you want to go back to the original and make any changes, it's now here or here. It's a slightly more round the houses and a little bit more convoluted way of compressing layers together, and the effect is pretty much the same as nesting, but it's worth knowing, and it's something that you want to have in your sort of arsenal of weapons when you're using After Effects. But in all honesty, at the early stages of your sort of animating work, you might find nesting slightly easier. Okay folks, so just to summarise, nesting and pre-composing, very good tools to try and compress and put multiple layers into one. They can then be worked on, animated, manipulated, moved off the screen as one single layer. Hope you found that useful. See you in the next tutorial.